And we're back with more on Newstalk Saga 960. So very glad you could join us on this edition of the Mark Petrano Show. Well, if you needed any more proof that the convoy continues to live rent-free in Justin Trudeau's head, well, all you have to do is look at how the regime and those who sympathize with the regime are treating people who are associated with the convoy. You just have to look at people like Tamara Leach, for instance, one of the organizers, now being threatened with going back to jail, allegedly for breaching her bail. You also look at other people like Andy Lee, for instance, who now has had her banking completely deplatformed, thrown out of the office in a number of cases, as bankers were coy about exactly what the problem was. Here was an individual who not only covered the convoy, but also supported the convoy and has continued to be a harsh critic online of Justin Trudeau and some of his more corrupt practices, of which there are many. And so all of a sudden, we have a situation where I believe the regime is going after, is targeting, almost like little search and destroy missions, going after people who were associated with the convoy, going after their money, continuing this process of having them deplatformed, having them turned into voiceless people who belong somewhere off in the distance, so you can't hear them anymore. And so this is extremely troubling. This is what you see in the kind of regimes that we have read about for many decades, tin pot dictatorships in Latin America and elsewhere, where the government treats people like dirt. And so we're seeing evidence that is happening right here, sadly, in Canada. We have BJ Dichter with us, who was one of the convoy organizers, communications person. He's also been an activist and harsh critic of Justin Trudeau. Doesn't happen to be in Canada right now, which is kind of probably a safe thing these days. And he was tweeting earlier about what happens when government starts to get weaponized against its population. Benjamin, welcome to the show.
It's good to see you, Mark. How are you?
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty good, but I do have to say that I do find it troubling, some of the actions of the government right now, as it targets its people. It certainly looks like it, using the Emergencies Act against people and using the tentacle of government, whether it's the police, whether it's the banking system, to zero in on and punish people that Justin Trudeau doesn't like. I mean, clearly the convoy continues to live rent-free in his head. What say you?
Yeah, I think that's clear and evident. It's just very concerning with what's going on right now, honestly. Like, now it's getting really serious. It was serious before, obviously, but we're now ramping it up to past 11 and past 12. I mean, they're utilizing, I guess, a pre-crime is how they're trying to acknowledge it, that Tamara was invited to speak at some event that I don't even know what the event is, to be entirely honest. And something that's supposed to take place in June or July, I'm not sure.
It's June.
And the Crown is arguing that that is a violation of her bail condition. And it's really odd because I know myself and many of us have not communicated indirectly or directly with Tamara since the Freedom Convoy. Why? Because despite the fact that she's a friend, but it sucks, we don't want to put her at any risk in violation of any sort of conditions of her bail, because we know politicized and authoritarian governments are going to use the slightest little loophole as justification to continue with their persecution. And even with none of us communicating with her in any way, shape, or form, it's still not enough. They still got to make her a target. And it's really odd, given the fact that, we know the identitarians in politics are obsessed with minorities and identities. And so here you have an Indigenous woman who led the largest national protest in Canadian history. She should be a leftist identitarian's wet dream. She should be everything they're aspiring to be. And plus the fact it was a movement built on peace and love and unity. But no, that's not enough, because she has the wrong opinions or the wrong ideas about individual freedom. So there she goes, get thrown into the, quote, arbitrary white supremacist box and now now they think that they can target and oppress her like a banana republic.
Yeah, she's supposed to get an award. I think a well-deserving award by this is the Jonas Freedom Award. It was supposed to happen in June, and obviously the government doesn't want her being rewarded for her work on the convoy. What kind of message does that send? Well, here it is, a person who is being essentially persecuted by the state, thrown in jail for what I believe 18 days was the number I heard.
Yeah.
Treated like garbage, denied bail, and all for waging a very successful and peaceful protest against these vaccine mandates, the COVID mandates in Canada, which continue to be among the most very draconian anywhere in the world.
But
And
Mark,
so,
you forgot something. Remember, she was brought into court in shackles, like it was Shawshank Redemption. Like, how embarrassing is that to be on the side of the bleeding hearts? We love everybody. You know, we're all inclusive, diversity and inclusion, whatever. Well, here you have everything you claim to have tried to want to build and advocate for, an Indigenous woman, a leader in her community who was well known to her community for many, many years, building a message around peace and love, and you throw her in shackles on a mischief charge. Like, it's crazy making what is going on. And, you know, I tell people down here, a country that is well versed in civil war, politicization, being targeted by the governments, people who have a lot of experience with that, I tell them what's happening in Canada right now, and they say, wow, that could never happen here. That is absolutely crazy.
yeah, I mean, let's not forget how this prime minister treated Jody Wilson-Raybould, who was also an Indigenous woman, booting her out of the post that she was in, Attorney General. Here's your tweet. People cannot comprehend what this feels like when your government tries to starve you. So much for all the love, compassion, and understanding the radical left likes to regurgitate. If we don't change course in our society, many more will be targeted. And so here we have Andy Lee being targeted. We have, of course, Tamara Leach being targeted. I think we have our entire population being targeted in certain respects, economically speaking, when you look at these carbon taxes. You know, I mean, I think economically speaking, Canadians are suffering. And I can't help but think that there's a sadistic streak to our government. They so hate the people in this country. They so hate the country, I think, that they've resorted to using an economic club to beat Canadians over the head with because they don't want us behaving in the way we're behaving. And so we're subjected to economic misery courtesy of this government. I mean, you look at this tweet now, Rex Murphy saying, you know, that a compassionate government would be behaving in a way that is just that. They would be getting rid of these carbon taxes, at least for now, while people are suffering the way that they are. But instead, it's not happening, and people are suffering, economically speaking, in the midst of all this. Interesting tweet also by Alan Fryer, who is a former CTV journalist. He came out and said, you know, I don't like slagging Americans, and I know you take your life in your hands when you say that they're doing something better than Canadians are, but you know, he spent some time in the United States and says, guess what? It's friendlier, it's wealthier, it's just kind of a better place to be right now. And I can't help but say, yeah, bravo for saying that. Fryer, I think, is dead on. He says, I know many Canadians love to slag America, and as with our country, it has its flaws, but after a couple of weeks here, the first time since COVID, I have to say almost everything is better, friendlier, wealthier, more efficient, and much, much more affordable. Okay, pile on. I don't think too many people will be piling on here. Something's going on in Canada that is very dark, dare I say, despotic and evil. And we're seeing evidence of that every day, Benjamin.
Well, I think also if you zoom out beyond just Canada, this is kind of a global phenomenon. It's a global concern, and it transcends all economic classes. So anybody who's listening to this, if you're wealthy, if you're a hedge fund manager, a successful lawyer, whatever it is, if you think you're going to skip this, you are sorely mistaken. I'm sorry. They're going to come for you too. And a perfect example of that is what happened with Abramovich in the United Kingdom. Now, whether you agree with Abramovich's politics or not, that's irrelevant. Or even fact, even if you disagree, it's even more irrelevant, because what did they do? They just stole a football team from him and seized all his assets in England. The guy's a billionaire. So this is not about, okay, well, I'm in the wealthier class, I'm armed with lots of lawyers, I'll be protected. No, 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 no. It's coming for you too. It's really scary. And in terms, what with Fryer is explaining about the United States, like, I've always hated the angst that some Canadians have in their adversarial tone towards America. I mean, I've gone there my whole life. I've both back and forth. Like, I love the United States as much as Canada, but for different reasons. But he's 100% accurate. You know, when I came down to Florida to recover with my ankle and just relax and, you know, start working on the projects we're working on, wow, man, like, you really appreciate not only the level of freedom, but the open discourse. I got reminded that people are going to say things that offend you, and that's good. It's good to be offended and to hear things you dislike, because then you have the opportunity to challenge or walk away. It doesn't matter. That's the way society needs to be. We cannot have a society where government regulates our thoughts, and that's what's going on. At least
well, what's going on, Benjamin, is that we have a government that does not want dissent. These people do not tolerate views that oppose their own. And here's a rather sad tweet by our friend Andy Lee.
Yeah.
My financial advisor at my bank just told me point blank that at this point I need to switch banking institutions. I don't know what they flagged me for, and they won't say exactly, but he said, as a friend, I'm telling you to take all your money and leave. She goes on to say, this is a private banker whose services I pay for, and he is telling me to take my money elsewhere because they will not lift restricting transactions on my account. They will not comment on whether the Emergencies Act was used. He said, even if I ask, I will never know. This is a lady who has used all her cards to buy milk for her kids. So this is why I suggest that there's a real cold-blooded nature to this regime running Canada right now. It's ugly. It is vindictive as hell, and they are seething with rage over what the convoy did in Canada. You want to deal with that?
Well, I think it kind of shows, from my opinion, how I view it. Justin Trudeau is very, very dark. He is a very angry person. This is why you're seeing him lose his temper finally in the public square and lash out at people. He is one of those people that is struggling on the inside, and there's a lot of hate in his heart. And you see that. You see that with this vindictive nature of how the government is behaving and how it's targeting citizens. It takes a certain level of darkness and hate to be able to vindictively go after people and not have the ability to say, bygones be bygones, I don't like their opinions, I disagree, but whatever, I'm just going to move on. And it just shows to the level of insecurity that he has as well. And I think that insecurity is well deserved, because, I mean, that family has been in the public sphere for his entire life, which, you know, I don't envy him for that, because that's difficult for anybody. But we all know he was not the one in the family who was supposed to run in politics, despite his personal ambitions, that was supposed to go to his brother. He even said himself, I lack the intellect of my father. Well, yeah, no kidding. I might not have agreed with just about any of his father's policies, but I don't know that his father would have been this weak and this feeble to target this 5'1", I think is what she is, Indigenous woman who was just looking to restore freedoms to her community, and many Indigenous people who also, for a variety of different reasons, and it's their personal reasons, it's up to them, who didn't want to be vaccinated. And okay, well, I don't get into the efficacy debate. I know lots of people do. Great, I support them. It's their right to be able to speak out and be heard. But the fact that the government is so feeble-minded and so petty that they're going to this instead of focusing on the real issues in the country, the economic collapse, the state of the global economy, the money printing, people can't afford food, or at least we're going in that direction. None of that matters. What matters is we need to take this 5'1" woman, this grandmother who is a pillar in her community, and beat her into the ground and step on her throat. Those are the priorities of the Canadian government. And it's sad. And, we all warned about Justin Trudeau getting into power. We knew it would be bad, but wow, I couldn't believe that he would destroy this country so quickly, to the point that, like Governor DeSantis said accurately, there are many Canadians that said, I'm done, I'm leaving the country. I just got a message from somebody 20 minutes ago saying exactly that, saying, I'm done, I got to leave, I can't stay here anymore.
And Trudeau doesn't care, because he wants people like me out. We're malcontents in his view. We're people who don't belong in the new Trudeau gulag. I got to wrap things up. BJ, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
All right, brother. We'll talk to you soon.
Best of luck to
Stay
you, my
safe.
friend. BJ Dichter. Got to go to a quick break. We'll be back with more on News Talk Saga 960 and the Mark Petrano Show after this.